Good evening, everyone. You're very, very welcome to tonight's session, which is on utilising the Female Athlete Toolkit. And this is the first webinar in this year's winter series of webinars in the player education strand. So you're all very, very welcome. If you haven't been to one of our webinars before, please feel free to get involved as much as you can throughout. As we've already started to utilise, the chat function is available. You can also type any question into the Q&A function throughout. We'll have another couple of polls and quizzes as well, just to make sure that you are interactive throughout the session and it's not just a case of listening to myself and Emily the whole way through. But if you do happen to have any technical issues, our advice is that you just maybe drop back out of the session and join back in. That's what we find tends to work best. So it's not the most technological solution, but it's the one that we find works the best. So hopefully, these are all here for tonight's session on utilising the Female Athlete Toolkit, which I mentioned before. And just before we get going with our first poll tonight, my name is Ailish Ward. I am the head of player development for the LGFA. I'm joined by my colleague in Leinster, Emily Jacob Harris. So, Emily, do you want to just unmute yourself to say hello there?
Hello, everyone.
Brilliant. So I think Emily's going to share our first poll there now, which will hopefully pop up on the screen. So just similar to what we were doing before and getting an idea of your roles, we just want to get a bit of an idea on whether you've actually heard or used the Female Athlete Toolkit before. So it'll just give us a bit of an idea on how to pitch tonight's session. So some of you might have heard of it and you haven't engaged with the material. Some of you might have heard of it and you've already used the material, which is brilliant, or you might not have heard of it. So we'll leave that open for another couple of minutes there or a minute while people get an opportunity to answer. Brilliant. So I think that's everyone answered, or most people answered as far as I can see. So um lots of people haven't heard of the toolkit, which is absolutely no problem. And other people have heard of it, but have not necessarily engaged with the material. So again, absolutely no issue with either of those answers, or if you had previously engaged with the material. It gives us a little bit of an idea of, I suppose, just where we're coming from tonight in terms of our knowledge on this area and the toolkit that exists. So that's brilliant. We will close that poll down now for the moment, and um, we'll come back to another poll in the future or a quiz. But I suppose for tonight's session, we this is around giving you a bit of an idea around the Female Athlete Toolkit, which is a resource that we've produced over the last number of months. It launched earlier this year. So firstly, we want to go through, where did this come from? What is it? So what's included in it? We're going to look at why it's actually important. That should be fairly self-explanatory in some ways, but we'll look a little bit at that later on. Then we're going to look at what resources are actually included in the toolkit. And then I know some of you guys are coaches, other people are already players within clubs. So actually, how can you start to utilize the toolkit within the environment that you're working in? And if you do require any further support or resources, or you want just further information, where you should access that. So I think it's really important to say at this point that whilst the tonight's session will give you a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the toolkit, we'll not go into loads and loads of depth around any of the areas, but we'll give you a little bit of a, I suppose, a flavour around some of the areas that the toolkit does cover and some of the information that is available. But if you have specific questions, you can obviously use the Q&A and the chat function throughout, and we'll encourage that. And hopefully myself and Emily will be able to answer those. But if we're not, and we need to go seek some expertise, we'll do that after the session for you as well. So where did the toolkit come from? So the toolkit was launched earlier this year, as I've already mentioned, but it stemmed out of I suppose, some collaborative work across the organisations that you see on the screen. So obviously ourselves, the Ladies Gaelic Football Association down there on the right-hand side. We worked alongside the Camogie Association. TUS Athlone, and then She Research, which is the sport, health, and exercise research arm of TUS Athlone, which specifically looks at issues relating to female athletes and females in general. So the three or four organizations came together earlier on this year to, I suppose, look at this area, pool their resources, pool their expertise, and start to look at a resource that could be produced collaboratively across these organizations to support athletes. So, as I mentioned there, in May this year, we joined forces with She Research, I suppose, to really look at supporting and empowering female athletes in their sports. And for us, that's specifically looking at ladies Gaelic. And obviously for Camogie, that's looking at Camogie. And the reason for that was because that they're the biggest team sports in our country. So I suppose building on the research from She, the toolkit aims to provide practical advice to players whilst addressing specific experiences for female Gaelic Games players. So, as opposed to either us producing something on our own within the LGFA or Camogie producing something on their own, which didn't have the research sitting behind it, it made sense for the three organizations to come together to really, I suppose, pool their resources in that area. And the initiative aims to enhance the well-being and performance of players through increasing their knowledge and their awareness on specific topics linked to female athletes, specifically such as menstruation and breast health. Okay, so um, at this stage, I'm going to pass you over to Emily here, who's just going to take you a little bit through what the toolkit consists of.
Thanks, Eilish. Yeah, so like Eilish was saying, like we just want to highlight what's actually in the Female Athlete Toolkit, and what resources are there. So you can find the toolkit on the LGFA website if you type in Female Athlete Toolkit, and there you'll find the downloadable booklet. So you can print it at home or use it online, whichever suits. Whatever reason you may be using it for. You can download that. There's PDF and JPEG resources, and you can see a list there of areas where you can what you can download. So your breast health, hormone contraception basics, hormonal contraception types, managing my period, which options are available to females, and then of the menstrual cycle, the five areas there: back to basics, debunking the common myths, disorders dictionary, time to talk, and top tips for coaches. So there's plenty there for you to read through and download whenever it suits you best. So I'm going to click the next slide, Eilish. Yeah, so basically this slide now is going to take you through where it's a quick video on where the toolkit actually originated from. And Eilish had mentioned the associations involved. So we having sound issues, Eilish. while Layla's just trying to get the sound working, let me just give you a little bit of a very brief um, idea of where it originated from. So basically, the Camogie Association and the Ladies Gaelic Association have joined forces with She Research at TUSC to introduce pioneering resources aimed at supporting and empowering female athletes in Camogie and ladies football.
Girls and
So
athletes themselves, also for their
Apologies. I could hear the sound the whole time, so I wasn't sure if that was coming through, but I'll restart the video. So hopefully the sound will be sharing there properly now, and you'll be able to read the captions as well if you
parents
can.
and
So
for
the first message of kind of the booklet that we want to convey is that female specific considerations, so things like the menstrual cycle, breast health, modal contraception, I think for the longest time they've been deemed as taboo topics. And I think one key message that we want to drive across, hopefully, and kind of change the narrative a little bit, is that there's no need to shy away from this topic. And in fact, in order to better improve female athlete care, we do need to talk about them. This toolkit has been developed by myself as well as Dr. Kelly McNulty, who has a PhD in female physiology, and supported kind of by the wider team at She Research. So Dr. Aoife Lane, Dr. Neith Kelleher, as well as Dr. Kieran O'Kahan.
Toolkit resonates with me as an athlete. Firstly, I think because it's probably well overdue. I think it's something that would have been really, really impactful and supportive when, say, I and my teammates were probably under 12, 14, 16, and those funny years when no one is obviously talking about periods or anything to do with it, including, you know, being in pain training or being tired or different things like that. And I think definitely for me, the misconceptions outlined in the toolkit are kind of reassuring and also create awareness just around things like fear of injury or different training at different stages of your cycle, and just highlights that more research needs to be done in the area.
I think the Female Athlete Toolkit is hugely important for young girls and athletes themselves, also for their parents and for their coaches. It gives the individuals and also the parents and the coaches a broader knowledge of what the menstrual cycle is and kind of signs and symptoms that come along with it, and not allow like females feel like they have to drop out of sport because of this issue.
We're empowering through education. So when we talk about empowering, equipping these athletes and those working with them necessary knowledge to be able to identify, what might be concerning, and then empowering them to reach out, speak out to someone that they trust, such as a doctor or a trusted adult for the younger girls.
I definitely think that from a researcher's perspective, it's fantastic, and like I said, it's well overdue, but definitely will help girls to actually feel supported.
It has been a fantastic opportunity, getting to collaborate with Camogie Association as well as Ladies Gaelic Football Association on this toolkit.
So hopefully that was worth the wait and the pain of not hearing for the first minute there, guys. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of, I suppose, Sherry Ann and She Research into TUS Athlone and the work that's gone into this toolkit. But also, I think it's really important that you can hear from the likes of Emer, from Claire Camogie and Sarah Dillon, who's a Westmeath footballer, around how important the toolkit can be for players, and I suppose the gap that it can bridge there. So it's really nice, I think, within that video that you actually get a bit of a sense from not only the researchers themselves, but actually the players themselves of the potential benefits of this. So just now, as we move on, we want to get a little bit of interaction from you guys. So we've heard from, I suppose, the researchers' aspects, and obviously you've heard from our aspect, and a little bit from the likes of Emer and Sarah there around why the toolkit might be important. But from your perspective, either if you are a player or as a coach, why do you feel that this toolkit could be important for players? So if you can just take maybe a couple of minutes to write down some answers in the chat there, we'd really, really appreciate it. So we'll give you a couple of minutes there to start to engage on the chat. So why do you feel this toolkit could be important for players? Brilliant. So starting to see some answers come through already. So keep writing those out. So yeah, helping to understand some spikes and falls and energy levels. I think we all know that whether you're a player yourself or potentially working with players, we can see that there can be spikes in that at different times of the month. Education around sensitive issues, absolutely. That's one thing is that if we don't talk about these subjects, they're never going to be talked about, and there's something that's obviously a reality for all of the players within the system. Allow players to know that they're not on their own 100%. I think that's really, really important. So just a little bit of a basic awareness and an understanding and nearly a solidarity with players as well. Um, yeah, helps players to understand their own bodies and what they need to do to work with that and what their bodies might need. 100%. That everybody's in the same boat, yet that others are going through the same things. Kids feel free to encourage or to feel encouraged and speak up. Um, Really good point there around helping young female teens cope with their changing bodies and navigate different personalities whilst remaining competitive. Absolutely. And I think, having the likes of Sarah and Emer as two wonderful role models of both LGFA and Camogie from that video, can hopefully help young females with that. Yeah, players might not feel confident to ask parents and I'd add coaches potentially to that as well about this subject as it can still be taboo, and make it a bit more of a normalized topic of conversation. So guys, some absolutely brilliant answers there. Thank you so much for your engagement there within the chat. So I suppose you have kind of covered a lot of these answers already, but for us, there's lots of reasons why the toolkit is important and why this is an important topic area of conversation for all players, both young and older. So it helps to keep players involved in our sports. As I mentioned already, there are some unique challenges for both the LGFA and Camogie in the sense that we're the biggest team sports in the country for females. Um, and we want to make sure that we retain as many girls and as many females as possible in the sport, particularly as they transition from, I suppose, child to youth and youth to adult. So it's really important that we understand the players and understand the unique challenges around them. We want to increase awareness and understanding of key topics related to female players. And I think at a basic level, that awareness is really important. Lots of you guys mentioned that within your responses there of actually just knowing that other people are experiencing the same things that you might potentially be experiencing. Can be really, really important and encouraging for players to know that. In particular, and whilst the Female Athlete Toolkit doesn't just focus on menstrual cycle and periods, these have been reported to affect sport and performance. And I know somebody mentioned there the competitive side of the sport. And as such, this toolkit really aims to bridge the gap between health literacy and communication. So we know that there are issues in terms of how much female players know around female athlete issues and how much their coaches know as well by default. So we want to make sure that we help those players and coaches and the people around them to increase their health literacy in this area. And we're doing that hopefully through communication of these important issues, which you can see by the toolkit itself, the resources that Emily mentioned, and accompanying videos. It provides a support resource for the team around players. So as I mentioned, the players are one person, or the player is one person, but it provides support for their coaches, it provides support for their teammates, their teachers, their parents, volunteers. And also, we want to prioritize providing some fundamental knowledge around female physiology. Okay, so it's really important that we understand the players that are playing our games, and the more that we understand about them, the more that we can support them and hopefully, as I mentioned already, keep them involved within the game, keep them participating, but also keep them give them the opportunity to perform to the best of their ability. So in terms of some of the areas, which I'm just going to go through now that the toolkit focuses on, we've just picked out, I think, some of the I suppose not to say that there are areas that are more key than others, but obviously Emily listed quite a number of resources earlier, so we don't want to go through everything in detail here this evening, obviously because we don't have time, but we just want to give you a bit of an idea. So I've taken some of us a little bit of a snapshot from some of the areas around certain pieces of information that will hopefully give you an idea of the types of information and knowledge that you would gain from the toolkit. So the first of these areas that we're going to focus on is breast health and the sports bra fit. So obviously, most, if not all, girls that and women that participate within sports are going to be wearing a sports bra, okay? And this, as I said, this is a little screenshot from the PDF itself that's included within the tissue or within the toolkit. But it gives you a little bit of an idea around some of the basics there, which you can read up the top. It also gives you some, I suppose, information around some of the current facts. So as we can see there from the left-hand side, the bottom left, approximately 85% of women or girls are wearing a per fitting sports bra. So this can affect both your participation, as I mentioned before, and your performance. And then it goes into a little bit around the types of bra types that are available there on the right-hand side. Our next area then, so this focuses on hormonal contraception. And as Emily's mentioned already, so there's two types of document available here. So this document here, which goes through the basics. Obviously, because of the nature of hormonal contraception, it's really important that you consult with any medical practitioner or professional before taking any medication. But this is just to give you a little bit of an idea around, I suppose, the potential types that are available, what they are, and then how do these actually work and how they can potentially affect the body, which can obviously have an impact on players, both on the pitch and off the pitch. Then we go on to managing my period. So there's quite a number of resources here that are available in relation to managing the period. So this is one that focuses on the options that are available. So for managing the period, this focuses on the products that are available to support athletes around their period. So again, it's these infographics, these are available as, I suppose, posters, and they're available as JPEG images or PDFs that can be downloaded. So I know that there's a lot of coaches on the call. These are things that can be potentially just downloaded and shared within groups, or either just hung up potentially in, say, for example, the changing rooms or the toilets at your local clubhouse. So there's lots of stuff here, again, information on, I suppose, how athletes, girls can manage their period and the options that are available to them. And again, I can just bring it even back to more basic than that. So as we see here on the left-hand side, looking at our menstrual cycles. So, I think going back to some of the key points that people raised earlier around what's, I suppose, reassuring girls that what they're experiencing isn't, they're not the only person that's experiencing that. And you can see there from the left-hand side around what's normal. There's nothing essentially with periods that's defined as normal. It's highly individual, but yet there's some common characteristics that all players may experience. So the cycle length, this can be between 21 and 35 days. For teenagers, that can be slightly longer, so for up to 40 days. For the period length, anything from 2 to 7 days, sorry. Period blood flow, it shouldn't be excessive or interfere with your quality of life. And your first period age, this can be between 9 and 15 years old. So I know a lot of the people here on the call mentioned that they're potentially working with under 12, under 14 teams. There's a potentially huge changes that are going on in girls' lives at this stage of their life. And the important thing is, whilst they all might be experiencing similar change, the changes are no doubt highly individual to them as well. So whilst we can try to support everybody, we're probably going to have to support everybody very different because ultimately everybody is an individual and their experience will only be their experience with this. So equally, by giving them a little bit of knowledge in this area, it can be reassuring to know that what they are experiencing, somebody else may be experiencing that as well. Now, at this stage, we're just going to bring you guys back in for a little bit more interaction. So I think Emily is going to pop up a little bit of quiz here on the screen. So this will take a little bit of time to read. But before I put up some of the answers, we just want you to look at read through the below and answer which of these are myths in relation to female athlete health and periods. So we want you to, I suppose, tick any of the ones that you believe are myths. So essentially that they're not true. So um, players shouldn't talk about their periods at training. Players perform worse whilst on their period. Players need to train in line with their cycle. A player's cycle doesn't help them as an athlete. Not having a period means a player is training hard. Everyone has a period every 28 days. Might have given the answer to that one away already. Period pain and other symptoms are normal. Players just have to get on with heavy bleeding, and players should avoid exercise whilst on their period. So there's obviously quite a few questions to answer there. So again, I'll give you maybe couple of minutes. We'll leave that one open because I know that's it's definitely a bit more difficult than the first question that we asked. So if you can tick any of the answers there that you feel are a potential myth. So we can see we're still waiting for maybe 10, 12 people to respond there. So I'll give you just another minute. Yeah, see the answers flying in there now, guys. Brilliant. So we'll just give you another minute or so to get any responses in. Okay, I think we'll leave it there. So I'm just going to end this and I hope it will work that I can publish this then. So I'll just share the results on screen here before I go through what the correct answers are. So players shouldn't talk about their periods of training. 82% thought that that was a myth. Players perform worse whilst on their periods. 76%. Players need to train in line with their cycle. 59% believe this. A player's cycle doesn't help them as an athlete. 47%. Not having a period means a player is training hard. 71%. And some people on the call might have heard of REDS, which is a condition. It's probably more common in endurance athletes, but something that might be linked to that. Everyone has a period every 28 days, so 76% came in on that one. Period pain and other symptoms are normal. 41%. Players just have to get on with a heavy bleeding, 65%, and players should avoid exercise while on their period. So, um, hopefully the correct answers have came up there, but this was a bit of a trick question. So actually all of the below were myths in relation to female athlete health and periods, okay? And this is something that's covered within one of the documents. So I'll just put up I'll not go through all the answers, but here are some and it's probably worked out that here are some of the answers that were maybe a little bit controversial. So, the first one, I think the top two are probably less controversial. So, I shouldn't talk about my periods of training. I think, based on the answers that we've got from you guys in the chat, this is something that we really want to start to open up these conversations around this area. It may, I suppose, traditionally have been a bit of a taboo subject, but actually, as it says there on the screen, when it comes to our participation in sport, we so often talk about fine margins around how we can get those little bit of extra 1% around getting our sleep right, getting our diet right, all the focus that we do around training. And yet we rarely, rarely talk about our menstrual cycle. Um, but in order to optimize our health, our participation, and our performance in sport, and as we know so often, this isn't just around making sure that players can perform to their best. It absolutely is about that in some ways, but it's actually around giving players an opportunity to play. And we need to break this silence and start to talk around this and start to consider this in the same light as these other functions. Um, Everyone has a period every 28 days. Um, I think this is a great line here. A textbook cycle might be 28 days, but we're not all textbooks. And as I said already, we're all highly individual. So the length of a menstrual cycle from day one of bleeding to the day before your next period can be between 21 to 35 days and up to 40 days within teenagers. It's also normal for your menstrual cycle to vary by up to 5 days cycle to cycle. Okay, so it mightn't be the same from one month to the next. Um, Equally, there's other people that could sit outside those average figures there as well. Now, the two answers at the bottom are probably some of the more controversial statements, maybe. And as you'll see from this, it goes from 1 to 2 and then 6 to 7. Okay, that's because I just took a snapshot, okay, from the toolkit. So all the myths that were on the screen, there's a full PDF that goes through each and every one of those, which includes the 4 on the screen here as well. So I'm going to perform worse in my periods. And that's something, I would often even hear players say myself. So there's actually no evidence though based on that for managing exercise performance across the menstrual cycle. So some athletes might notice a bit of a difference in the performance, whilst others not, and others don't. So again, it's about taking an individual approach to training. Um, and then finally, period pains and other symptoms are normal. So yes, some cycle-related symptoms can be expected. Severe period pain and other symptoms that impact your day-to-day life as well as performance should just not be dismissed as being normal, okay? So if you're experiencing things such as severe pain, and maybe the terminology when this is a little bit misleading. So yes, people might experience some mild pain, but if you're experiencing some severe pain, you don't have to train through the pain. And that's where, as with any of these issues, we would always recommend that you speak to your doctor or your GP for further information. Emily, is there anything that you want to come in on any of those in terms of any of the myths?
Um, I suppose it's actually like enlightening to see some of the myths because, I'd use the excuse myself that I'm on my period, so I'm not going to really perform. So I think you're kind of protecting yourself a little bit because a lot of people have been discussing the topic saying it's a taboo topic and no one wants to talk about it. And it's kind of easier to like sit back and just be like, no, I'm grand. I don't want to say I'm on my period, or especially with younger girls. I don't think senior girls have much of an issue to talk about what's going on with them. But it's just interesting. I think you touched on it earlier, Eilish, but like not everybody is the same either. So some people can have a normal cycle, some don't. So I think we should kind of be conscious that it may work, and the chat you're having with one female about this area might not work with the next female that comes along and wants to talk to you about it. So I suppose being conscious about it, yes, it is a taboo area as well, but just being conscious of who you're talking to, and kind of you want to educate yourself more on different situations with different girls, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think like one of the points that you might have alluded to there slightly, but it came up in the chat around our games are traditionally male, have been, I suppose, stem from male dominated sports. So, and a lot of coaches or managers and teams might be male. So, it's brilliant to see so many male coaches on the call tonight as well, engaging with the subject, like genuinely fantastic. So, I think the more that we can open up those types of conversations and even just those communication lines, it can be really, really positive. And on that note, I suppose there's lots of myths that exist around this. Not having a period is a sign of hard training, or that we shouldn't exercise whilst we're on our period. That age-old thing that we might have seen when we were in school of when girls are maybe trying to get out of PE. But this document's designed to debunk and I suppose counteract some of these myths, and again give people reassurance that maybe what they're experiencing um doesn't have to debilitate their participation or their performance within their sport. And as mentioned, there are loads of coaches on the call this evening, which is great. So, in terms of some of the top tips that are available for you, we've mentioned this, like it's really around, I suppose, being able to create those open communication channels so that athletes and players can openly and honestly communicate about their cycle. And this, there's no doubt that it will feel awkward at first, but it's just relevant to their performance, but it's also relevant to their health and their participation within the sport. So I suppose using items such as the posters from the toolkit and some of the information from this toolkit will show that you're actually receptive to this. Um, Giving them support. So, for some players, participation as well as their performance might be affected by their menstrual cycle. So, I suppose just trying to provide support to maximize any issues, or sorry, maximize any positives and minimize the issues. I think Emily's touched upon it there, just remembering everybody's different, so you'll need to individualize that support. And the environment, so create environments, and this is something, I think that we've started to see a lot more over the last number of years within clubs of creating more female friendly environments. So potentially making sure that we have period products available in the toilets, even something as simple as having the toilets open, um, even a step before that. We've started to see obviously the changes around kit colour and short colour over the last number of years as well. And the most important thing, very similar to myself and Emily, actually on this subject, you're not expected to be an expert or have all the information, but just being able to signpost to some of the resources there can help people. So whether it's the likes of really, I suppose, directing towards these resources, or if it's going towards their doctor or their GP, that's absolutely brilliant as well. And then in your club or your environment, what you can do. So, we would just always say encourage people to share the resources via your communication channels. Display the posters up in that environment, whether it's your clubhouse, your changing facilities, and share the information with parents of underage teams. And potentially, at the start of the year, whenever you're maybe putting together management teams or things like that, include the resources whenever you're doing that so that all the coaches and volunteers are aware of that within your club or within that environment. And, making sure as well, in particular, yes, all teams will have an FLO and should have an FLO in terms of if players have an issue that they want to discuss. But making sure that players can obviously discuss that with the FLO, but also other members of the team. And as a player, what can you do? So, I suppose take a bit of ownership and role model and encourage other players to communicate, and encourage open communication channels, share the resources as well, and educate yourself to be able to maximize your own participation and your performance within your sport. You know, as Emily's mentioned already, I think I know whenever I was we were going through the stage of designing these resources, that there was lots of stuff that I didn't know as a player as well. So it was really enlightening for me. So, you know, it's, I suppose, helped me to increase my own participation in the sport as well, which is brilliant. And then finally, just in terms of further resources and ongoing support, so there'll be some more videos released, specifically kind of bringing to life the menstrual cycle and breast health, which will be released. So they'll kind of mimic the first video that you would have seen. And you can also go to our own website. So if, as Emily's mentioned, if you type in female athlete health, it will come up. Or if you go on to the LGFA hub section of the website, click on players and click on female athlete health, it should come up there. Or if you want to go on to sheresearch.ie, there's loads and loads of resources there as well that you can access at any time. Okay, so hopefully that has given you a little bit of insight into the toolkit. I suppose where it came from, what does it actually consist of, some of the areas within it, why we feel it's important, and then how you can start to implement that in your club. So I just want to thank you all for firstly coming on the call. But if there's any questions now, if anybody wants to come on, you can either type those into the chat or type those into the Q&A box, and we'll stay on for the next while and answer those.